This week's winner of the Just You Award goes to Jeffrey Godfrey with Recovery Gone Viral 2.0. Jeffrey's podcast is not only for people in recovery, but practitioners and physician's assistants and anybody who works with people in recovery, because he's all about dignity and no stigma. And even though you can't see them, he does bring his finger puppets to the podcast. But as you know, what I love about Jeffrey's podcast is he talks to one person. He talks to his freedom fighters, but he doesn't say, you guys and everybody. And as a result, when you listen to Jeffrey's podcast, you can tell that he cares about you, whether or not you're a freedom fighter. You're doing a great job, Jeffrey. Keep up the good work, talking to us individually and letting us know we matter.
Podcast is about collaboration. Me going on your podcast is a collaboration. You coming on my podcast, that's a collaboration. We bring in people. People don't realize in the online world, you're not competitors, you're co-competitors. Like Lori LeBay, who I love dearly, I always refer to her. I always bring her advertisers. I want to support her because guess what? Her audience is also my audience. We can grow together. It doesn't mean that you're going to go away or they're going to choose not to work with you. It's going to open doors.
If you have been thinking or saying, I want to do a podcast, but then immediately you think, I'm not techie. I hate my voice. Who would listen? What would I say? If you are a woman over 40, you have things to say. And with my course, the Podpreneur Blueprint, you can get a podcast up and running within a week if you'd like. If you're not techie, don't worry. I give you options of how to find someone that can help you. We are not islands. We don't do this alone. If not now, when? Because on New Year's, when you make that new resolution, this year, I'm going to think about this. You could be saying, this year I did, and I have 52 episodes. You can do this. Learn all about podcasting with the Podpreneur Blueprint System. Go to www.coachlori.com and get your flash sale today. Somebody's praying for an answer, and you have it. Will you say yes? Go to www.coachlori.com. That's LAURIE.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Suzanne Newman is with Answers for Elders. In fact, you're the founder and everything Answers for Elders, right?
Not necessarily. I have a very big wind beneath my wings, and that is a production and web director who does all of our production, media, logos, marketing, digital stuff. I'm very lucky in that. He's a big part of our organization.
The last time we talked, which was episode 6 of Interrupted, we talked all about how you came to do this. This was not your thing, but you were thrown in it. Your life was interrupted. And now you have created this, I want to say empire, because you are the place where people go. At my age, I have so many friends now that are caretakers for their parents, for their spouses. Yeah. And I always send them to listen to your podcast.
I appreciate it. It's not only caregivers that are doing this. What we found, yes, when we first started, we were designed to be a caregiver's resource. But what's happened as time has progressed since 15 years ago, we are seeing a ton of younger seniors in their early to mid 70s starting to say, I'm not going to have my kids go through what I did while I took care of my parents. So they're now making decisions that our greatest generation parents did not want to make for themselves. We're seeing a ton of people. A big trend is downsizing, aging in place, modifying their homes so that they can stay there. There's a lot of resources as far as how do you do it? What do you do? And we hope to kind of be that portal.
You have been podcasting for so long. One of the things when I teach podcasting is some people just want to share. Some people want to build their business. But what I think I've seen with you is, number one, just what you talked about now, the progression, but that you were willing to open your mic and say, this is what I was walking through, and share your struggle. Mm-hmm. And it has opened so many doors and made so many connections.
When I was taking care of my mom, Lori, it's kind of a process, but I realized my world had fallen apart through caregiving. I was in a situation in 2009 in a recession where I was in my early 50s at the time, and I found myself really at a crux of what am I going to do? And there was no corporate job that was going to pay me. We've got this age discrimination factor. I'd come from being a vice president of a media company to now being unemployed. I had lost my house. I had lost everything, but I still have a spiritual belief. I've followed this teacher called Emma Curtis Hopkins, and she's known as the teacher of teachers in the New Thought movement. A big statement that I always believe in: if you see a job, it's yours. I was kind of raised that way. I had this aunt that was amazing, and she would say, there's diamonds in your life. There's opportunities for you to be polished and do something greater. I remember going into a grocery store parking lot, and you'd see grocery cart sitting there out in the open. She'd say, okay, take it in. I've always been raised to be that person. I realized what that job was is to be the caregiver's voice and to come out there and say, you know what? They have all kinds of questions. They go through just enormous stress, overwhelm, and oftentimes they give up their lives just like I did. And they end up going down the rabbit hole where they have burnout, even more so the spouse of a loved one that is caring for maybe a husband or wife with Alzheimer's and dementia. That's even a whole bigger, complex situation. And I realized more and more as I started doing my research that there was nothing out there at the time in 2009 to help those that are caring for loved ones. And that's how it all started. We started as an online portal, and we existed from late 2010 is when we launched the site. We were a website until about 2017 when I was offered my own radio show. I did guest appearances at time on Cairo Radio talking about elder care. It morphed into, I ended up working with the Seahawks. That's a whole other story, that I do a holiday program with them. And that's how another radio station found me and said, you know, we really think that you would resonate with our listeners. And I'm going like, really? That's how it all started. We started our first broadcast is kind of fun. Our anniversary on radio is April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2017. So we've been on air now. This is our 8th year. It's pretty crazy. And we are now nationally syndicated across 40 cities in the U.S. Just got a renewal for the show for another year. We're very grateful.
A couple things we talked about, how long you've been going and the importance of consistency, because what you have built is a following of people that can trust you. And if they're not there yet, they're going to be there eventually.
Luckily, I was a Google trainer in the corporate world. So I understand specifically a lot of ways in which one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people that I've coached in content is they don't have a plan. They don't lay out anything. They just start putting out episodes. And what happens is you're going to end up being in a situation where you're going to stall. I think the most important thing is to be consistent in your content, to always have a schedule. We have a schedule. We meet that schedule every week. I mean, there's a few times that we've missed it when I'm on vacation, but for the most part, it's given us a very high ranking. Listen Notes ranks us at around the top 2% of all podcasts. We've done a really good job of keeping our episodes consistent, keeping the time frame of what we do an episode consistent. We always put keywords in the base, and we do everything on YouTube, which means every single episode that we do is actually videoed. What I'm finding is in many cases, especially the boomer and the older population, they tend to go to YouTube. They're not really ready to listen podcasts yet. but they will go to YouTube and watch videos. And so that's been really helpful. And it's nice to meet the experts that we bring on, and they are the cream of the crop in the industry. I have strict criteria of who goes on my show. I'm very careful. What I want to make sure is that whoever they talk to and listen to, they're going to talk to someone that's credible, that has high, strong ethics, that will obviously be that person somebody can pick up the phone and call. If you know a topic, you should know people. What I always do, because I have a schedule every month, I know what kind of guests I need to do. I can sit down for an hour the month prior. We're right now talking about aging in place. We do special content, special commercials. We do all kinds of things within the podcast network. But April's theme is aging in place. So I'm real specific about who we bring forward. Who are the innovators in the industry that are doing these things? Like, we just had an amazing individual that's taken a watch that looks like a Fitbit and created this amazing home monitoring system that's discreet, and that people, if they need help, and then they differentiate with, yes, an Apple Watch will tell you followed, but it's not that accurate. I mean, this system can pinpoint where they are in the home, what happened, what time it happened, which is really important. And it will send out an alert to a son or daughter, or whoever that caregiver is, mom fell. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're excited to bring. And it's something that's low budget, not expensive, that a senior can have in their home. And that's an amazing safety net. Next month, we talk about senior living. I'm right now securing our guests for the following month. We know who we're going to bring in, what the topics are going to be. Luckily, we've been doing this show for so long. I know the right people to call to do the program. And that's how we operate. That's how we've been for years. People will start podcasts and they'll go, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And the first thing I will say to them, do you have a content calendar? What is your plan? And you know what? When I bring in a client, because I work with the top clients, I spend a 2-hour session with them up front before they ever record a thing. And I talk to them about, we need to create a calendar so that your content is going to be in succession. Because 5 years from now, somebody's going to listen to that. Ours is very unique in the fact that it's not gone. It's always relevant. Even down the road, 5 years from now, there's going to be somebody that's listening to it. In our case, it's very important that whatever expert that you're working with, that I coach with, that we have amazing specialists on our site, they all have a calendar of what they're going to talk about. I know where they're going. And so we can prep during April when we're talking about aging in place. We're going to talk about, well, next month, we're going to talk about senior living. We have an order of how we work things. And I think that's what's important. The other thing that I realize is for the regular guests that actually we're monetized through these specialists, we'd get an expert that would show up for their interview and they would say to me, what am I going to talk about? What should we talk about? They look at me and I go, well, I have an idea because I have to keep working with them. I'm kind of dialed into what their business is, but I realize I can't be doing this for everybody. To lay out, I have a special template spreadsheet that I send to everybody that gives them the date and all of these things. We fill out the template. We send that to them, and that's their startup. We give them a specialist page where we list all of their podcasts. And the really cool thing is then we give them a customized website badge that is branded to them. And then they put that badge on their homepage and it'll say, listen to our podcast. Or in the case of like Air Living here in Seattle, they're amazing. They have communities all over King County. They actually added their podcast directly to their main menu. They have an amazing podcast library that people, when they're looking at a senior living community, they can actually get to know them and get to know the people. That was an amazing series we did of 36 podcasts just for them, and it was incredible. There's 2 things we do to drive traffic. First of all, don't underestimate SEO, and every single podcast we do is transcribed. So we are easily found in a SEO search, which is good. You look up any of our main clients, like if you look up Air Living or Brookdale or any kind of organization that we might work with, Humana or anything, many times we will show up organically on the first page because we've done a very good job of embedding keywords. And we've made sure that every single interview is transcribed. Here's the thing, Lori, I find is interesting about transcription. People will put in a Google search, how can I get my mom to stop driving? There's an example. It may be embedded in another podcast that they talked about, well, they might talk about dementia and they might have that, different conversations. It might not be titled that, but people can go right to that podcast and they can learn what the greater concept is. So we get a lot of cross traffic that way. But second of all, we actually do two things to drive traffic. Every single time I have a free guest on my show that they don't pay for their interview, I ask them to share it. We give them a template on Facebook. We put the thumbprint of the interview. We put the link and we send this to the guest. And that is done every single time. If we do somebody that gets a free interview, and here's your interviews. And of course, everything's on YouTube. So a lot of times they share to YouTube because it's better for social media. The other thing that we do, and I think this is the real key part of this, is that we have a specialist of the month. These are high profile people that have very large networks that may be like right now, this month, in the month of April, we're doing Dr. Jill Berkey. She is one of the founders, the icons of Aging in Place. She's on the board of aging in the state of Iowa. She has created this amazing app called Silver Spaces that helps people navigate their own home for aging in place. She's incredible. She has a huge network. Basically, we gave her free everything for the month of April. She's promoted through all of our radio show, all of our podcasts, and she shares it on her. It's a collaboration. So she continuously shares Answers for Elders. And we also ask them to list us as a partner on her website. So what happens is we're getting traffic now from other big organizations that are coming in. And that's how we build our traffic.
I love that. That's brilliant. What do you use to transcribe?
It's just done through our platform. We upload it through Omni. The other thing is all the YouTube videos are automatically transcribed as well. When you upload, it's done automatically. It's really interesting how that happens. And when you get high profile people, if you can get them to do an interview, like Dr. Jill Berkey, the first week that we had her, or like the first 2 days, in my little niche viewership, she got 547 downloads. That's pretty amazing for my industry. I mean, the fact that we got that, that's our hope, that we continue to do that kind of things. And I'm always open to new ideas. I think the thing is you can't get complacent. Like we just started the Specialist Spotlight program, and Dr. Jill was the first one to do this. And I didn't really know if that would work or not, but it does. It was really kind of cool. The other thing that we do, obviously, on YouTube that we just started doing, and if you go to our YouTube channel, you will see, is we changed the thumbprints each episode. One of the things that's done is we have now color coded for different areas because we have 4 major headings under health and wellness, living solutions, life changes, money and law. So those are the 4 categories. The idea is that obviously providing content in that way, each of the headings has a different background color. So people, if they're looking for legal decisions, they can find all the blue ones or whatever color we do. And that way it's easier for them just to overview for the eyes. We've been playing a lot with that. It's like one of the things that we do is we never stop learning and stop changing. We keep the vision the same. We keep the content the same, but I'm always throwing ideas to Mike, my production director, to say, what do you think about this? Because I come up with some crazy ideas every once in a while, but we try to do that.
Before we go, I want to address, one is you have brought this up twice, and I think it's so great if we can do this, is have a team.
Absolutely. And have a team member that can say no to you. I probably appreciate Mike, who does my background stuff, more from the times that he says, Suzanne's it's not going to work. I've worked with people that are just yes people and they do what you tell them to do. But to have somebody that's knowledgeable to say, Suzanne, you forget. You can't do it this way because most of the people looking at this on their phone, you don't want to have this happen this way. So he's really good about remembering the things that I forget. I think that's really good. The other thing is he's so much a part of everything that I talk about. We've been working together now over 10 years. Mike and I are simpatico that I actually, this last year, he was gifted equity in Answers for Elders. He actually has shares in the company.
Wow, that's amazing.
I couldn't do anything without him.
And almost anticipate the growth.
It's amazing because, Lori, on a side note, we've been getting a little bit of chirping of people that want to purchase Answers for Elders. That's kind of a interesting interesting thing. I think about when I started this company, I struggled. I was scared how I was going to get the rent paid so many times. And yet it's interesting because now I just spoke with a mergers and acquisitions organization, the CEO of someone, and he says, somebody's interested in purchasing your company. And then I hired a mergers and acquisitions attorney. They came up with a new valuation that blew me away for how much my company's worth, which I didn't even think for a tenth of what it would be. So it's kind of interesting to think, wow, I will be able to retire someday. I will be able to achieve the dreams that I wanted to. And I had no idea that I could do that. I didn't realize how valuable every single episode was. But now I have a library of almost, 1,300 episodes and growing by like about 50 to 75 per month. We upload twice a week. It's just accumulated over the years that's where we are. And at this point, like what the attorney told me, he goes, Suzanne, no one will ever catch you. You have so much content. You've created like you called an empire. And I'm going like, me? I'm just me. But what has happened has been really amazing. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. And I've always stayed true to my vision. I've always had a screening and process. I've always made sure that every guest is at the top of the game or they're not going to be involved.
I want so bad for the women that I teach to be able to make a living and retire on a podcast because I believe it is doable.
Yeah,
and
it is.
In fact, I call my blueprint system, I call it Podpreneur Blueprint. How do these high-end guests that are bringing you downloads, do you find them? Do they find you? I
find them oftentimes. There's two things that happens. We're pretty well known now, so people know who we are. But one of the things that's really cool about it is when I started the company, I always featured high-end experts from day one, just when we were a website. But we struggled with I was in the struggling phases for the first 6-7 years of Answers for Elders. I was poor, like dirt poor, because I didn't have the resource. I learned really quick. Number one, you have to have more than one source of revenue. You have to create streams that can bring revenue. If you want to retire on that, that's really important. We have paying experts. They are on our site. They pay us monthly and it's not inexpensive, but you know what? People at the top of their game, they'll pay it because they know the quality. Number two, you always have to do everything quality. Don't do a rinky-dink podcast that you think you can do this and it's not. If you don't do it right, don't do it at all. There's a lot of people out there, they're doing these podcasts, but they're not the quality and people won't listen to it. 3, understand that podcast is about collaboration. It's important, like me going on your podcast is a collaboration. You coming on my podcast, that's a collaboration. We bring in people. People don't realize in the online world, you're not competitors, you're co-competitors. Like Lori LeBay, who I love dearly, I always refer to her. I always bring her advertisers. I want to support her because guess what? Her audience is also my audience. We can grow together. It doesn't mean that you're going to go away or they're going to choose not to work with you. It's going to open doors. And I think that's the really key thing. But also we have many different opportunities for people to participate. They can run ads on my podcast. They can do ads on my website. They can do podcasts, and then we have different tiers of podcast programs. We also do different types of special promotions. So when we do like 12 Days of Goodness with the Seattle Seahawks, we have people that buy exhibitor tables. We do different things. That's a huge income producer for us. So we are very mindful to make sure we have multiple revenue streams coming in. And when you do that, you can retire. You absolutely can someday. And I mean, I'm looking, Lori, I'm 68 years old. I'm past most of my classmates that I graduated with. They're all retired, but I'm like just coming up right now. I mean, I'm in the beginning stages of, there's no way I'm going to quit now. I'm looking at probably another 4 years. It was a real affirmation that I'm doing a few things right when I talked to this M&A company, and I was shocked at the valuation of this company because I had no idea. No idea.
I've heard the saying, consistency compounds.
It does.
That's what you've done. Man, I just feel so excited. You've given us so many great ideas. I don't believe everyone should do a podcast, but if you want to,
let's do it. Like you said, let's speak in a way that makes our listeners lean in.
Right.
Let's have guests that are honoring and good and will give the highest value. So let's do it in a way that is serving our community, that whatever our podcast is, serving them to the highest level.
You bring up a really good point. I always am open to coach and help people that are serious about their podcast, as long as they're willing to follow through. I work with some people that I'll say, okay, you're going to do a podcast. Great idea. What's your plan? Well, they don't have one. The key is you have to come down to basics. And a lot of people, they'll talk, but they don't have the skill set, or they don't take the time to lay it out. If you can't do that, then you shouldn't do a podcast. Bottom line, you can't be scattered. And there's a big part of me, I have ADHD. So I get scattered a lot at times, but I have forced myself to focus. That's what helps me. This is what we're here to talk about. Keep the point the same. Keep points simple. We have ways to keep the interview focused, and that's the most important thing too. Always keep your content the same amount of time. My podcasts, I believe, need to be short. Nobody wants to sit and listen to Alzheimer's for a whole hour. They don't have time. They're busy, or they don't have a long attention span. So there is not a single podcast that goes over 15 minutes. You might do a 4-part series on a topic, but it'll be 15 minutes and then you're done. I really believe that that's all we should be doing. Always want to put a good, strong call to action at the end of every interview. You can reach this person at this website. Thank you for being here. This is your phone number. However you want people to reach out to you, you can buy so-and-so's book. If I'm going to promote a book, I always ask them to send me the book in advance before they do the interview. How many people, if they're not willing to send me their book up front, I don't do the interview. I am very careful, again, about making sure that I have all the facts in front of me, that I'm prepared, and that we always take time to make sure that that interview, we know exactly how it's going to go, both sides. And that eliminates nerves. They know where it's going to go, and they know what questions I'm going to ask them. It's not this big, crazy rabbit hole that they go down.
2 things that you said are not negotiable. One is quality. So I always say, pay for your cover art.
Yep.
Make sure it's paid for, make sure it's brilliant, and edit it. Editing is not that hard. And you don't have to take out everything, but if I'm going to take the time to listen, make it worth my while.
Exactly. It's not that hard to do it the right way. Think about what it's like for the guest. Why are they there? It's not just for you to talk. And that's a lot, I think, where people, what you're saying is keep your comments concise as much as possible. That's why we have a plan of what that interview is going to be. It helps me stay on track so I don't go off on tangents, because again, having ADHD, sometimes I'll go there, but it also gives me the ability to really focus. We have what's called a talking point sheet. We send the sheet to the guest. They fill it out. I think you did one for my show when you were on it. What do you want Suzanne to ask you? And then what are the main points that you want to bring out, so that I make sure that those are pulled out. And those are just little things. It takes them 5 minutes to fill it out before they're on my show, and they email that back to me. I download it. I prepare. I want to make sure that if they're talking about something new that is a specific content, I will go research it in advance so I understand a little bit more. That's my responsibility. And I take that very, very seriously. It's very important to me that we take the responsibility as hosts to understand specifically what that person does. If you don't, then you're not doing them a service either.
Here's the thing I love about your podcast.
Tell me.
Is you get to it.
I do.
When Answers for Elders, this is what we're talking about, and you go to it.
Yeah, you're right. The other thing that I have to be careful of, don't talk about, like we just mentioned April, because we're in April, but when this podcast is listened to in November, they don't care that it's April. They don't care what month it is. The point that I'm making is that we have to be mindful as guests to keep that podcast listenable far into the future. I always tell them, refrain from, unless you're talking about specifically holiday tips, that's different. Obviously, we want to make sure that that's generic in time. And there's a lot of things that we have to do. Now it just becomes second nature. Like you said, it's hard to start, but once you get going and you have a plan, it's easy. We always have the following episode is brought to you by, so they know it was pre-recorded.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for. Thank you in advance.